this particular debate. But the last debate will be the constitutional amendment on the securing of a woman's right to end a pregnancy in the first and second trimesters. And so we'll be, and that of course is the one, hopefully we develop the disciplines of civil discourse so that when we get to that one, we can have a great conversation together. But I'm very happy to see you all here, and excited that we have representatives from South Dakota Open Primaries here, volunteers from Open Primaries that are here with us. And Jeff Postisel has put together his thoughts on why he opposes the open primary. And also, just last night, I got word from Senator Wick that he'll be joining us. I emailed him back and said, I'm so happy I could dance a jig. You have no idea how happy it made me that Senator Wick could come. So he's going to be joining us at any time. We're waiting for him to log into the Zoom link, and we will just fit him in as soon as we can when we are looking for a speech opposed. So let's go ahead and get started if we may. Just should have double checked this thing. Okay, there you guys are. Okay, so this is a Braver Angels debate. Braver Angels is the largest depolarizing agency in the United States, and it's several of us went to the convention this summer, and we were hoping to go to the next one. But it's a large organization that is working to improve the quality of our national conversation. So they do workshops all over the United States, many of them online, many of them in person, training people to listen better, to hear what the person they disagree with is actually saying and not assume things. And then they do a whole style of debating. And we're calling these creative conversations or courageous conversations because these are really more conversations than a debate. And I feel like the word debate gives the wrong spin. This is meant to be a conversation that's creative and courageous. And so that's the whole point of this, to train people and to give them a structure whereby they can actually have conversations about real serious matters and yet do it in a way where everyone goes away feeling affirmed and listened to. I cannot tell you how meaningful it was to me when we did the lake debate. You know, our lake issue is just as controversial as this one. You know, it's $25 million it's not chump change. And I thought we had a phenomenal debate. We walked out of the room. It was quite a remarkable experience. I think everyone walked out feeling good, like I was heard, I was able to say what I needed to say. And so that's my goal for this one as well. I really think that we can do it. We can have a conversation and walk out of the room, and every one of us will feel respected and appreciated. We may disagree, but we're going to appreciate each other and listen to each other. And that's the goal of this whole movement. So our two debate judges are Jeff and Alethea. There's Jeff and Alethea, and they're trained debate moderators. Jeff is going to be moderating the food tax, and Alethea is going to moderate the abortion debate. And so I'm doing the first. And so by judges, that means that if there's a instance where someone is, insisting on breaking a rule, well, we'll kind of have a tete-a-tete and figure out what to do. So they're help us run the show. And then also Carter. Where's Carter over here? Carter is going to be our whip. He's our bouncer if you're really bad. So he says, I was teasing about being our bouncer, and he said, well, I am a gentle giant, but I'm still a giant. So, and he's also going to be our timer this evening, so we appreciate Carter. He's been a great assistant in all of this. So what are the rules for these debates? First of all, many of you know me. My name is Joel. But once the gavel falls, I will no longer be Joel. I have my personal opinions right now, and once the gavel falls, I will have no personal opinions. I will be the moderator. Or at least I will try to do my best to be completely separate myself from my own opinions of things. So I will do my best to moderate, and according to Brave Angels rules, you're always supposed to address the moderator as Mr. Moderator or Mr. What's the other term? Which chair? Yeah, Mr. Chair. There we go. I like Mr. Moderator. It just flows off the tongue a little better. So that's one of them. The first rule, maybe the second rule, we'll call this the first rule, is that you should always say what you actually think. We're not into a debate situation where you have to argue both sides and you have to argue positions you don't actually take. We're not interested in that. We only want to hear what you really think. And we want to hear it because we feel like it's valuable. Even if we disagree with it, it's valuable and it's important that we as Americans, with all the rancor that's out there, it's important that we learn to listen to each other again. And that's the goal of Brave Angels. So all I care about is, a moderator, is what you actually think and believe, not what you're saying because you want to grandstand or make yourself look impressive. So the second rule is all questions and answers should be addressed to the moderator, not to the speaker. So this is a Braver Angels, part of the Braver Angels culture. They really want debates to be structured so that when you have a question, you don't address the question to the person that just gave the speech. You address the question to the moderator. And the value of that is it just kind of diffuses the emotion. If someone gets, really emotional and that's fine. Passion is great. We do not care if you're passionate. We just want you to control that passion and keep it on a forward direction. And so one way to do that is to focus your question. It's a little bit harder to, scream at someone if they're not the person that actually, So anyway, we have a little skit we're going to do for you to illustrate this. And Jeff over here has just finished giving a speech on why he thinks dogs are better than cats. Okay? So Jeff, let's hear your speech.
15 points on why dogs are better than cats.
So do we have a question? Alethea, would you like to ask the question? Here, you need to use
Jeff, so what do you think?
Excuse me, Alethea. The questions need to be addressed to the moderator, not to the speaker, so address your question immediately.
Mr. Moderator, what does the speaker think of the cost of owning a cat versus the cost of owning a dog?
Well, he's an accountant, so
yeah. Surprisingly, I've never ran the numbers yet.
And that illustrates another point. We really value people saying, I don't know. It's just a good thing to not feel embarrassed. If you don't know the answer, don't BS it. Just say, I don't know. I need to look into this. So, okay, so that's rule 2. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. The rule 3, it's just another part of the Braver Angels culture, is tapping. And it means that when we hear something we like, we just kind of hit our hands on the bottom of our chair. Yeah, you just tap a little bit. And the reason why tapping is an important part of the Braver Angels culture is it's a way of expressing appreciation for a speech. Again, even if you disagree with the speech, even if you don't like the speech, you can appreciate the fact that the person had the courage to get up and say what they really believe. And so the way that we appreciate that and express community with that is by tapping. So tapping is an important part of the Braver Angels debate culture. So that's and then the fourth one, I switched this one up, but anyway, once you've spoken, we give preference to those who haven't spoken, and this came right out of our last debate where we had a person that kept trying to speak, and which is fine, but we kept saying, you've spoken a few times, let's let other people speak. And so this is just saying, once you've spoken, just make sure everybody else has a chance to go first. And it's just common sense, isn't it? And then go if no one else is going. So there we go. Those are our rules. You like the rules? Yeah. Good. I think they're tapping. Yeah, I'll do a little tapping. Thank you. Okay, so this came to me just last night. I thought, what is the Braver Angels magic? And it occurred to me that the Braver Angels magic, it's all the cultural things that we've just talked about, but it's more than that. It's a kind of a social contract that we make with each other. And the contract is we all want to have our beliefs and ideas thought and respected and heard without anyone making us feel foolish or offending us by calling us names. We all want that. Every one of us in this room wants our ideas to be taken seriously and without rancor or putting us down. And the way that deal works is that we just simply say, I will listen to you. I will take your beliefs seriously. I will thoughtfully consider what you say. Even if I think it's the most crazy thing in the world, I will thoughtfully consider it and seriously consider it if you will do the same for me. And so it's a tit for tat, I know. And so, grace is always better than tit for tat, but it can make things go a lot better if we just kind of take that assumption that we are going to listen to each other seriously and carefully and desire to understand, but we expect the same from the other person. So let's all just make a commitment right now that we're going to participate in the magic, and we're going to listen to each other respectfully. And so there we go. Thanks. So, and we all benefit in the end. So, great. So the question, I like to set things up as a question and then a resolution. So the question is, so it's the same thing, but should South Dakota have a top 2 open primary is what we're asking tonight. And so the resolution is in favor of it. And we always make resolutions in favor because when you make them opposed, they get confusing. So resolve, South Dakota should have a top 2 open primary. So we will, and the way this will work is we'll hear speeches in favor, and we've kind of aligned 4 speeches, 2 in favor, 2 against. Hopefully Senator Wick will be joining us soon. And so we always start with a speech in favor of the resolution, and that will be Janelle. Oh, so am I ready to? Oh yeah, I have a little bit more before Janelle comes. Okay. So what is the top 2 open primary? I have kind of my summary of it. If this isn't correct, someone correct me, but I just did it off the top of my head because I've been doing a lot of reading about it. And then I have also from the South Dakota Secretary of State webpage. So this is signed off by our Attorney General, and it's on the Secretary of State page. So this is the official. But this is my description. In a regular closed primary, each party runs its own primary election and selects a candidate for each office from their own primary. And the top 2, from their own party, right, sorry. In a top 2 primary, all candidates run against each other in one open primary. All voters cast 1 vote for their preferred candidate of any party, so any voter can vote for whoever they want to vote for any party, and only the top 2 vote getters move on to the general election. So the general election is a selection between the top 2 vote getters from the primary. So is that good enough? Good enough description? So this comes from the webpage, the Secretary of State. For the listed offices, this amendment requires 1 primary election wherein all candidates run against each other in their respective races, including major and minor party and unaffiliated candidates. A candidate may list any party next to their name on the ballot regardless of party affiliation or registration. All voters may vote for any candidate. The 2 candidates receiving the most votes advance to the general election. And this is just a little, you don't really need to worry about the last part, but if there is any more than 1 candidate elected to an office, then the number of candidates advancing to the general election is twice the number to be elected. So in other words, if it's a county board and there are 6 open seats, you would have if there are 3 open seats, you'd have 6 people that would move on to the general and then select. Oh, there are. Okay. So that it is important information then. It's not just, county commission elections are important too. I don't mean to imply they're not. So, John, did someone else? Okay. So that's the official lingo. Here's the schedule we're going to try to keep. We're right on schedule. We're going to begin the debate by 7:15. We'd like to finish the debate between 8 o'clock and 8:15. We have a few minutes to debrief, maybe up to 15 minutes. We'd like you to stay and not leave for just a little debrief and then some final announcements, and we're done. So and I think we're ready to go. This next slide should be for Stephanie. Oh, I got to gavel us in. That's right. I have to become Mr. Moderator. I almost forgot that spot. So let the debate begin. I am now Mr. Moderator.
Right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Janelle Lust, and I am a volunteer and on the steering committee for South Dakota Open Primaries. And first, let me express my gratitude to be able to come and speak at an organization that values depolarization, because that's really what the Open Primaries Initiative is all about, is to try to depolarize our politics. The theme of what we're trying to do with this ballot initiative is to let all voters vote. And currently that's not the case in the elections as run in South Dakota. Independent voters can vote in the Democratic primary, but they are not allowed to vote in the Republican primary. So the theme of let all voters vote is really to say in the primary elections, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which are very important elections in this state, everyone should have an equal right to participate in those elections, especially if they've chosen not to be party affiliated. What we're trying to do is to get a 2024 proposal on the ballot this November. We do currently have 38,000 signatures, and we needed a little more than 37,000 to get on the ballot. However, we want to get 50,000 signatures, because I don't know how many of you know about the initiation process, but sometimes signatures aren't valid. Sometimes somebody accidentally signed twice, they thought they were registered to vote, they weren't, they put the wrong address down. So to make sure we have enough validity, that's where we're trying to get, and we have until May 7th to do that. We believe that all registered voters should be able to vote. With the top two open primary, all candidates for an office run against each other in the June primary election, and then the top two get in the general election. Right now, a large number of voters are excluded from voting in those primary elections. Right now, 25% of the electorate in South Dakota are independent voters. Nationally, it's as high as 45%. Independents often have very little say in who's going to end up representing them. In South Dakota's closed primary, that just enfranchises about 148,000 registered voters who cannot fully participate in those primary elections. This is not something unique to South Dakota. Many states have some form of open primary form. The form that we're looking at adopting has been run for several years. For example, in Nebraska, was recently adopted in California and Alaska. And in California, they've extensively studied the electorate there. And while the states around it are becoming increasingly polarized, open primaries has actually had a moderating effect in California. Public funds, excuse me, it didn't advance. Every taxpayer in South Dakota pays for primary elections. But if you're an independent, you don't get to fully participate in that. And we feel that that's not fair. If you're paying for elections, you should have the right to vote in those elections. And in South Dakota, frankly, because we are primarily a Republican state, most of the time, the Republican primary is the most important election. Most of the legislative elections in South Dakota were decided in the primary. In 2022, 86% of legislative elections were uncontested. And that means the Republican candidate that got through the primary did not have an opponent later in the general election. So if you were a Democrat or an independent, you didn't get to select who was going to be representing you. A disappointing 21 of 35 Senate seats were uncontested. We believe that political parties also promote the partisanship. The main opposition that we've had to this statewide, and we're hearing from it, are the heads of the parties. What ends up happening is there's usually a low turnout in primary elections, and so sometimes you can have as little as 10% of the electorate deciding who is going to be the elected representative, because primary elections have much lower turnout. So the most not rabid, that's a poor word, the people that are most excited to be voting in their primary are the ones that show up. And so then you often have the most polarized version of both parties ending up being the candidate. And, you know, we realize South Dakota is a conservative state, but we feel like this goes along with conservative values. It's fair, and fairness and competition is a conservative value. And also, we want to point out that we don't feel like this is a partisan issue. The people on the steering committee are Republican and Democrat and independent, and what we're really trying to find is a way to depolarize our politics, to moderate our politics, to make sure that it isn't, for both parties, the most extreme version of those parties that are the only two selections that we have left in the election when it gets to the general election time. All right, do we have questions?
Thank you. Before we do questions, we need to alt out. We need to check to see if Senator Wick is with us. They can't quite tell with this on the screen. Can you guys go ahead and check?
I'm here if you can hear me.
Great, great, wonderful. Well, then you're next. You're next. So did you hear Janelle's talk? Were you able to hear that?
I was able to hear it. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for making the time, especially this busy time, to join us. Before you begin, we have to field two questions for our previous speaker, Janelle Lust. So we'll be right with you, Senator. Does anyone have a question for Janelle? Dave. And we need to use the mic so that people online can hear. There's quite a few people listening.
I would be interested in whatever estimations, speculations, whatever the speaker has with regard to the potential impact of this, adopting this policy on the strength of the political parties. Would it tend to undermine party strength, or would it reinforce it, or don't you know?
Good question, Dave.
I don't think it's going to undermine party strength, because you still get to list your party affiliation on the primary ballot. And so if you're a hardline Republican and you only want to vote for Republicans, you're going to have that option on the primary ballot. You're going to know who the Republicans are. The party apparatus is still going to be involved in electing the candidates that they want. But what it will probably do is get more options out there for people that aren't maybe party affiliated. Independents would have the same ability to, I mean, you can run as an independent right now, provided you get the signatures, but by being in the primary election, what we're hoping is you get more people that are more independent-minded, more moderate-minded, getting through to the general election.
And we're going to share this mic. Okay. Roger, let's hear your question.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, have any states that have implemented this in the past moved away from it?
Oh, that's a good question.
I would have to say I don't know the answer to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't know that.
So that makes two questions. Sorry, we'll only take two. Sorry about that, Steve. And so now it's time to hear for a con voice on the resolution South Dakota should have top 2 open primary. We're going to hear from Senator Wick. Again, thank you for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Is there a way that you can click so that, yeah, there we go. Great.
All right.
We don't want to voice.
I'm just trying to find an angle where you can actually see me.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And thank you for making the accommodation while I'm in Pierre to appear and give my side of the debate tonight. My name is John Wick. I am a state senator from Big Stone City, South Dakota. And I also serve as chairman of the South Dakota Republican Party. The first question I want you all to consider before you sign this petition to change our Constitution, or if it makes it onto the ballot, before you vote for this, ask yourself one question. Why is this necessary? What problem are you trying to solve? Like I said, I have the benefit of serving in the South Dakota Senate. I get asked those questions regularly. Every bill I vote on and every committee vote I take is public and on the record. I have to stand before the voters and defend each vote. So I have to know exactly what it is I'm voting for. Is it fairness? Is it ballot access? Or is it a push to make South Dakota a lot more like the states that people are fleeing here from? We just got through the first cycle of financial reporting. This constitutional amendment ballot measure is receiving more than half of its funding from Colorado alone. Out-of-state money is pouring into South Dakota and back out to out-of-state consultants. I don't need $650,000 worth of consultants to tell me this is a bad measure for South Dakotans. I don't need $650,000 worth of consultants to tell me that California's ballot is not worth emulating. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person, and I know that it's really hard to focus on the screen, and I'm fighting a cold. My voice is less than optimal. I'm not here to attack my opponents. I'm not here to minimize them. I'm here to tell you that no matter how much money they raise, no matter how much, or no matter what their out-of-state consultants funded by their out-of-state dollars tell them to say to you, they are not going to deliver what they promise. South Dakota is a Republican state right now. But as recently as 2002, South Dakota sent an entire delegation of Democrats to represent us in Washington, D.C. Our party didn't like that. So we went to work. We registered voters. We changed hearts and minds. And now over 51% of registered voters identify as Republican in South Dakota. We win the races because we have for years worked within this current system and engaged with our voters to achieve the government they have repeatedly asked us to produce. The Republican Party has managed to do this because of our closed primary. Only those who share our values and identify with them may choose our candidates by voting in our primaries. As I meet with other state chairmen in the Republican National Committee, they all wish they had the opportunity to actually choose their own candidates. The most likely reason we're here and the gap in our politics is the lack of Democratic representation in Pierre and throughout partisan elections in South Dakota. So please allow me to posit a theory. The Democratic Party stopped winning statewide elections when they opened their primary. And those supporting this ballot measure have figured that out. The Democratic Party welcomed the independents and no party affiliated voters with open arms. And like any other organization, when you open your membership ranks to those who are not interested in the outcome of your organization, you run into serious problems. This amendment, should it pass, will actually limit ballot access for Democrats and independents. The Republican Party has developed a healthy bench of strong candidates that have name recognition and access to donors that other candidates just don't have. I believe in a different path. I believe that when you're not winning at the ballot box, you need to evaluate your message. You need to evaluate your connection to your voters. You need to expand on that and deliver results. Build a party, build a movement. Don't jump for a shortcut and quick change our Constitution. Please don't sign the open primary constitutional amendment petition. And if it shows up on your ballot, please vote no. Our Constitution is just fine without spelling out the details of an open primary. Our current primary process is spelled out in codified law. Our legislators and peer can change it anytime we wish. This kind of a detail does not belong in our Constitution. So thank you for the opportunity to offer a reason or two for opposition for this constitutional amendment. I will stand by for questions. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Questions for Senator Wick? Do we have questions for Senator Wick? Yes, let's do some tapping. We got it, even though he's not. Can you hear us tapping, Senator Wick?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Okay, that's our way of expressing appreciation for a person that spoke their truth and their reality. Yes, here's a question for you, or addressed. Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, moderator, could you ask the speaker if the Republican Party has received fossil fuel money from out of state?
So has the Republican Party received out-of-state money as well?
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. We have not received any direct donations from any fossil fuel organizations. We've received most of our money this year from attendance at our Trump rally in Rapid City and from our regular in-state supporters.
Another question for Senator Wick. Yes. Oh, here we go. Your mic is right there. There we go.
I believe can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr.
can.
Speaker, is that okay to address him?
Sure.
All right.
You need to address me.
Mr. Speaker, a question for the Speaker. In the previous testimony, it was clearly stated that this will allow the disenfranchised, the independents, 157 or whatever that figure was, 1,000 voters to become more involved in the election primary process. Now, my question, and of course, I'm well aware of Americans for Prosperity, NRA, and ALEC, and other organizations that are giving Republican candidates and Republicans money. So that argument kind of falls on deaf ears. But why would you be opposed to allowing voters that are disenfranchised now being able to vote in an open primary, to go along with what the first speaker said?
Senator Wick, your response?
Well, Mr. Moderator, thank you for the question. I would ask a question to answer yours. Why wouldn't you register with a party and get involved in the process? Why wouldn't you engage the process that exists instead of trying to change the constitution of your state? We have an opportunity to engage, not to pull back and stay away from the year-to-year politics. To me, and to a lot of people in my organization, politics is year-round and not just one Tuesday in November, in every other November, sorry. There's a lot more to voting than there is to just showing up at the ballot box. We want people engaged, informed, and completely ready to make the decisions that it requires to operate in our republic.
Thank you, Senator. We very, very much appreciate you joining with us this evening. And let's, again, give a nice tapping round for Senator Wick. Thank you. And you can continue to listen in and ask questions as we move forward. But we'll have to take your face off the screen so that we can get our PowerPoint back up. So there we go. And I think if you can notify our IT folks, they would be able to put you back on the screen if you want to ask a question of our future speakers. But thank you so much for coming. So, and now we have as our next pro speech, a speech from Tarek, sorry, that's right, okay. Tarek, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, hello, my name is Tarek Malouf. I'm here to speak in favor of open primaries. And I'd like to start with the question that Chairman Wick posed. What are you trying to solve? And I want to ask that question about primaries more generally. Why do we have primary elections at all? And the reason is that there are a limited number of spots on the general election ballot in November. You could imagine a system where anybody who could collect 50 signatures could get their name in the ballot in November, and you would have 40 candidates for one legislative seat, and it would be a mess. And we recognize that that would be a mess. And so we have a process to narrow down the number of candidates to 2 or 4, depending on the number of seats that are available. And so my question to you is, if we're going to narrow down from a field of 40 potential candidates down to 2, which 2 should we pick? And my answer, and the open primaries answer, is we should pick the two with the most support. We should pick the two with the most support if that means that we have 2 Republicans on the ballot. We should pick the two with the most support if that means there are 2 Democrats on the ballot. And I'll say that, as Janelle mentioned, we're a rather diverse coalition. I'm a Republican. I believe Janelle's a Democrat. And I approach this thinking about the purpose of elections being the maximization of voter happiness. If you're a voter in West River District, where Republicans outnumber Democrats by more than 2 to 1, you are better served by having 2 Republicans on the general election ballot in November than a Republican and a Democrat who, let's be honest, is never going to win. That's what open primaries offers you the chance to do, to vote for any candidate, regardless of their party affiliation and your party affiliation, if they've convinced you that their views on the issues reflect your own. I'm a proud member of the Republican Party, and I'm active in politics year-round. But I don't think that you should have to be a member of the Republican Party or that you should have to be a member of a political organization year-round in order to fully recognize your voice every November. I'd also like to go back to some of the other things Chairman Wick raised. We do spend money on consultants. That is mostly an artifact of the reporting requirements in South Dakota. So South Dakota allows you to report spending for campaigns like ours in relatively broad terms. When you see consulting on a campaign disclosure, we're paying people to go out and gather signatures. Right now, this is all about getting enough signatures so that you, the voters, can have a chance to decide in November if you think that this is a good idea or not. And I think that fundamentally, that is what we are for, right? Asking the voters to participate in November, hopefully by voting for open primaries, but by at least expressing your opinion on open primaries, and hopefully through open primaries, giving you the opportunity to select from a more diverse range of candidates from whom you can select someone who more closely reflects your own views. That's the goal. That's actually all I have. I am not a fill the time kind of guy, so if you have any questions, direct them to the moderator.
Yeah, that's right. But you do have to answer them. Steve, what's your question? And you need to speak into a mic so they can hear you online.
Thank you for the mic. Mr. Moderator, in 2010 I ran for state senate as an independent. So we got to the general election in November. There was the Republican, the Democrat, and me, the independent. Would this resolution eliminate that option?
Good question. Tarek, let's hear the answer.
Open primaries themselves would not eliminate you from that election, but you would have to come in the top 2 in the primary election in order to get onto the November ballot, which I think is a fair requirement to have. I understand that it can be disappointing to not make the ballot, but the reality is that we want the strongest 2 candidates on the ballot in November, or the strongest 4 candidates, depending on the office. And so that's what open primaries does. As long as you come in the top 2 in that open primary, you get to go on the ballot. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green. As long as you can gather enough support, you can get on the ballot.
Thank you very much. Good question. Another question for our speaker? All right, Alec. Our IT guy is asking a question. This is great.
Hi, Mr. Moderator. I wanted to clarify quick before I continued. You said it's possible for then just 2 Republican candidates to be on the ballot or just 2 Democrats? It wouldn't just have to be one or the other, correct?
So you're asking a question to me?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that before I continued.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Okay. From my understanding, then that would probably just make them pander to the most common denominator, correct? In that scenario, it feels like those 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats they would be rather lukewarm. They wouldn't be more one side or the other. They would try to be towards the middle in order to get as much voter strength as they can from either side, is how I view this. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Good question. There we go.
So let me first say there is no voting system that will prevent politicians from pandering to you. They will always do that. That is just in the nature of the process. But to your answer, I think the short answer is no. You could imagine a district where Republicans outnumber Democrats 2 to 1. But 2 moderate Republicans are going to eat each other's vote share. So what you're more likely to end up with is a more conservative Republican and a more moderate Republican making it through to the general election. So you still have a diversity of views. And while I think that, obviously every politician targets their most likely voters. So if I'm a moderate candidate, I'm targeting moderate voters. If I'm a conservative candidate, I can target conservative voters. What you get is candidates who have to choose a lane, but are not restricted in choosing that lane to saying, I only have to appeal to Republicans or I only have to appeal to Democrats. I can say if there's a position that I think 40% of Republicans and Democrats all agree on, I can choose that as my policy position, and it incentivizes me to align my own views more with the voters, which is sort of what you want out of any electoral system, is to provide politicians with an incentive to match the views of the voters that they're hoping to represent.
Thank you, Tarek. Let's hear it for Tarek. Tarek and Janelle are both, they are both volunteers. They're not employees, or just so everybody understands, they're donating their time to this. And now our next speaker, our con speaker, is just Jeff Pospisil. It's great to have Jeff here with us to give us the speech.
What did I do?
Let's see, you need to go down. Yeah, there you are.
Okay.
I spelled your name right, didn't I?
How do I hit the go button on that? IT, can you help me? Thank you. I'm Jeff Pospisil. You've had lawyers and a politician, now you get an accountant. So I don't know what that means, but so when I came across this subject, I thought to myself, why do we even have political parties? What is their purpose? And what I thought about is, shouldn't we just expect voters to go to the ballot, go to the election fully informed, know their candidates, know their issues, know the legislation, have read through it all? But to tell you the truth, even if we did that, which most of us aren't going to do that, even if we did that, there's something about human nature that works against us. We are tribal by nature. We happen to fit into our tribes, so we all want to fit in. Think how painful it is when you're at a family reunion or at a class or at work and you don't fit in. We want to fit in. And that's what the political parties ended up doing, is they provided us a place where we can be with people or support people that we believe we fit in. So imagine this. I'm going to use this as my example. So there's probably some people here that are Minnesota Vikings fans. Why? Why? I mean, honestly, we're in South Dakota. You are a geographic free agent, right? You could choose the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not that far down the road. You would be a Super Bowl winner right now. So I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm not any better. But we stick with them, even though every year we could theoretically pick one. But it's our tribe. We have our own values. We have our own language. We say "skull" a lot more if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. We have our own worldview. We also, and this is the important one, we also have our own preferred vision for the future. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, you're hoping for that Super Bowl, right? So same thing when we get to our political parties. We have our own values, our own language, our own view of the world, as well as our own vision for the future. And one of the shames is, a lot of times when we think about this, you think of just Democrats and Republicans. But in actuality, there's so many more different views. What we talked about is the independents, but we have the third parties that have played a very important role. We have libertarians and Green Party, socialist, all these different kinds of ones. And so when you cast your ballot for a vote, when you are supporting a candidate, you are really supporting someone that you hope will further your vision for the future. And I do agree that I want as many people putting their vision forward as possible in the voting. What we found, though, is we have had 2 states that have recently gone to the top 2 open primaries, California in 2012 and Washington in 2008. And you see their turnout, 30% for California, and Washington is 40% before the change. After the change, I'm a numbers guy. I went right to the Secretary of State website, 26% for California, 38% for Washington. So less people are participating. Less people are wanting to put forward their vision for the future. I don't know why that is, but I think Steve probably put some of it is, you know your candidate's not even going to make it there, so why even go there? Your candidates might not even make the general election. Because what we're used to seeing is a ballot that might have all these options in there. You might have a Democrat, a Republican, a Green Party, and a Libertarian. I didn't know that was that was something new I learned. Anyway, but you might have all those options. And I have voted third party more often than probably about half the time, because some of the times I just don't like any of my options. And so I'll vote Libertarian, I'll vote Constitution, because what it tells them is, I'm not happy with you. So, and it might upset the election, but it might not. But what we've seen in California, what we've seen in Washington, is a lot of times they just have two options. And this is where the majority of people vote. So this is where 70–80% of people are actually voting. So the majority of people, they get there, and not only did you have lower turnout at the primary, but then you have lower options, less options when you actually get to vote. And even in California, you see a lot of ballots that just have two Democrats. And what we're going to see, again, is a lot of ballots that just have two Republicans here. And so you're not going to even see somebody that might identify with your vision for the future. So you're losing that option to have your candidate that might represent your vision for the future. So that is why I prefer that. Is if you make the change, you'll likely have lower participation in the primary, lower options on the general election, and the last one is, I think there's less security. So I'm old enough to, if you remember Rush Limbaugh and Operation Chaos, that he tried to disrupt the 2008 general election where they tried to get Hillary Rodham Clinton elected over Barack Obama. Anyway, what that did is it just opened it up that you could do that when you have an open primary. So do we really want people voting strategically instead of voting for their vision for their future, the candidate that they believe will push their vision for the future? Do we want them to vote strategically or towards their vision? And so in a nutshell, that is why I'm opposed, is less turnout in the primaries, as evidenced by Washington and California, less choice when you get to the general election, and less security because there is an option for strategic voting instead of voting towards your vision.
Let's hear a tapping for Jeff. That's so thank you, Jeff. Question for Jeff, or for the moderator. So,
Mr. Moderator, I'm curious on the percentages. Were those single-year election percentages, or were those averages over multiple years? Did they take into account presidential years versus non-presidential years?
Very good question.
Excellent. So I thought about that too. I tried to use two on presidential years. I tried to use an even number of presidential years and non-presidential years when I did it. So I just went right to the Secretary of State website, grabbed their turnout results, and averaged. So for California, you had 6 elections before that, from 2000 to 2010. And then you had 2012 to 2018, you had 4 elections there. And then I just took the averages there of what the turnout was. I did the same thing on Washington. Of course, the years were a little different, but I made sure they had the same proportion of presidential elections and non-presidential elections. So,
thank you. Thank you. Good question. Another question for our speaker? Another question? Senator Wick, are you still with us? You have a question for our speaker? Okay. No more questions? Oh, Roger. Here we go.
It would seem to me in the top 2, what you would end up with is the person that most of the people in the state wanted to win. Where you did it the way we do it now, you end up with the person that is in the party that most of that party wants to win. Is that correct?
Good question for our speaker. There we go.
yeah, and that is correct. I mean, and it's interesting too, as I thought about this, but you're basically disenfranchising even that minority that has that view of, let's just say I'm a Democrat in West River, I think we said. All of a sudden you don't have any candidate that shares your point of view, and maybe that is the case if they don't have a candidate up there, but if you do have a candidate up there, you could vote for somebody even though they might not win. Like I said, I voted for a lot of third parties, but I'm voting for the vision I want, not the vision that they're giving me. So.
That was 2 questions, right? There we go. Yeah, there were 2 questions. Thank you very much, Jeff. That was great. I really appreciate that. Let's hear it for Jeff again. Thank you very much. So, and now we're looking for another pro speech, or they don't have to be directly pro. They could be pro-ish. So, Mike, let's hear your. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm registered as an independent, have been since we moved to South Dakota in 1992. Have voted for a lot of third-party candidates over time, and both sides of the aisle. I'm for this because, to me, it makes individual voters, individual citizens, it elevates their importance relative to the importance of parties, which I think is a good thing. To the extent that the system we have now, to my mind, the parties are able, in some sense, to control the system more than the people are controlling the system as far as the results are concerned. And to the extent that elections are designed to reflect the will of the whole people, I think this amendment would move us more in that direction, rather than having the parties control. I'll question a couple things mentioned by the previous speakers. I don't think it's fair to say that because people are not registered in a party and they're not participating in that particular party's activities, that they are less engaged in the political process. And I also think, I was jotting notes here. Okay. So I think the system, the political system, should adapt to the will of the people rather than the will of the people adapting to the mechanisms of the system. Right now, I think the will of the people is adapting to the system. And I think Senator Wick is making sort of an argument for why that's good. I disagree with that argument. It is hard to say how things would play out in particular circumstances. We'll certainly have a lot of elections where we'll have two Republicans on the candidate. But I think it's not that the people who are not Republican have been necessarily disenfranchised by that, because they did get to participate. If it was an open primary, they got to participate in the selection of those two candidates. And they now get the chance to choose among two Republicans, that's true, but they could at least pick the Republican that's more to their liking. So in the end, I think for Democrats and independents in this state, and Republicans and independents in California, they might be more likely to get a candidate that's more moderate, more to their liking than if it's just a Republican who's very likely to win against the Democrat anyway, depending on the particular jurisdiction that we're looking at. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I haven't been doing a good time. Trevor, Carter's been over here keeping time, and I haven't been consulting with him. So we've gone over a few times, I think. I'm sorry, and that's totally my fault. A question for Dr. Catalano. Question for Dr. Catalano. Any questions? Yeah, Jeff. Here. You got.
So in California, they've had some experience with this. Do you believe their candidates have become more moderate? I think, like, for example, one of their senators they replaced, Mr. Moderator, I'm asking. Sorry, I'm breaking the own rule. So Kamala Harris, for example, replaced Barbara Boxer, and I don't see her as necessarily more moderate. In your opinion, is that an exception, or is that to being more moderate, or is that something else?
Good question. Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know for sure, and that's a hard measure, how are you going to measure that for sure? I did read a couple articles that claim to show that in some jurisdictions it has had the effect of moderation. I can't say that, I would say that's an authoritative answer. But.
Another question for our speaker? Question for our speaker? Roger, yeah, there we go.
I think I agree with you, Mike. I think the net effect of this, or Mr. Moderator, excuse me, the net effect of this is you would elect a person that had
less beholden to the party that they were in than you do now. And I think that's good. It bothers me when we send 400 people to Washington and we have 200 on one side and 201 on the other side. And I just can't believe they're all independently thinking what's the best thing for the country.
Response, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think this system will incentivize office holders to try to address the thinking, the desires, et cetera, of a wider group of people than the system we have now.
Great, thank you, Mike. Appreciate your speech. Let's hear it for Mike. Do a little tapping for him. So we've had a speech in favor. Is there anyone that would like to give an extemporaneous speech on why you're feeling reluctance and the problems that you may have with the top 2 open primary system? Any negative speeches out there? Thoughts? And you've already spoken once, so we're going to follow that rule. Going to try to find one other speech, a negative speech, a speech against the motion. Yes, Alethea. You got a mic coming, right? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you everybody for allowing me to speak. That wasn't my intention, and maybe I'm oversimplifying. I don't feel it's right. I used an analogy at a previous meeting that I feel like, if you remember the old children's tale about the grasshopper and the ant, and the ants, that there are a lot of people that do a lot of legwork. And again, I want to say that, again, to the other gentleman's comment, that those who are independents or those who have not affiliated with a particular party are not politically active, because that would not be a fair statement. But I would say that those of us that do work within the party, we do a lot of legwork, and I have a problem personally with Johnny-come-lately that comes in and tries to change the values of the party that we're all working towards. I feel when we did some research for a previous meeting with the GOP, I think when we see this, and both sides have said it, we see the political party get pulled towards the center, and we end up, I believe, as was said earlier too, they're going to pander to the people they're going to get the most votes for. And I feel that that's just a dilution of our values. What else did I want to say? I don't have my thoughts all collected very well. I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. And again, we can see historically where we see these states that are, look, I came here from a state, from North Carolina. I came to South Dakota for the values that are here. I see a lot of infighting within our GOP, where there's not a great loyal opposition, a strong loyal opposition in this state. I hate the infighting that I see. I hate the labels that I see, as I see my party being torn apart. But at the same time, I want to protect my party. I wanted to ask a question of the doctor, but I didn't know if it was appropriate or not, Mr. Moderator. Like, he said he moved here in '92. I wanted to ask him, what state did you come here from? Like, what were your values? And listen, I just remembered my other point. Everybody talks about, it seems like the main point for the pro people on this is the disenfranchised independent voter. If your rights were being taken away and you were told, no, you cannot vote, I could agree with that argument. But you made a choice to be an independent voter. And if you look at what the sheer definition of the word independent means, is you're standing alone. You're not part of a party. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, I'm sorry. I guess that's how I feel about it. And I'm talking from my heart. I don't have any statistics to quote to you or anything like that. I just don't want to see us, as we move towards the center, we move towards the center. Where's the great debates? Where's the arguments from both sides? We end up with a one-party system. We end up like communist China or Nazi Germany or any other fascist state. Debate is good when it's civil, and you're going to have opposition. You're going to, I don't agree with everything in the GOP. It would be, if I did, I'd be blind. But I have to agree with what the senator said. You align yourself with the party that you agree with the most. And again, I have to agree with the senator. Why the need for change? And who's behind this? You know, why? And we saw Colorado go from what? From red to purple to blue. So I'm sorry. I see it as outside interference in the great state of South Dakota. I came to this state, I was adopted by this great state, and I am totally opposed to this open primary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that speech. Again, let's give him a good tapping. Again, that was very clearly, you fit the requirement of saying what you truly believe, because that was very evident, wasn't it? Thank you. A question, I don't know your name. Robert. Robert. A question for Robert today? A question for Robert on his views? Okay. Yes, a question for Robert? Okay.
Okay, Robert. Tonight, as we sit here, all senators in South Dakota Senate are being wined and dined by Genevo, the airplane company with the jet fuel, to vote yes for 201. This supersedes partisan politics, big money talks, the rest of us walk. My question to you, Senator Wick didn't answer the question. He dodged it with another question. That's the biggest dodge you can do in politics, not answer the question. My question to you is, what about those disenfranchised voters, the independents and the Democrats? You're going to pick up a lot of those voters with this two-primary system. And I haven't signed the petition. I haven't decided one way or another which is good and bad. I'm torn like the rest of us are. But if this will help get more people to come, and I know the statistics were there that it was like 0.2% less or whatever, but if it will get people to the ballot box, get people enthroned to participate in the process, why would not it be a good thing?
So that question was to me. Sorry, I'm losing. After the longer this goes, the more it seems to devolve. So, good question for Robert. Robert, let's hear your answer.
I want to draw from an argument that Mr. Claggett, one of our county commissioners, made at a meeting, that those disenfranchised voters, in the end, we all talked about it, especially in this state where the majority, 51% registered Republicans, but John made the point that, okay, in the end, you can talk about it. It sounds great theoretically, but when the rubber hits the road, we talked about it, you're going to end up with 2 Republicans. And then again, the gentleman who made the point about when he ran as an independent for the state Senate seat, you're not going to see any third parties, really, because it's going to come down to, if it's a simple majority, how do you get on the ballot? So I think you're going to have more disenfranchised people.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that response. We'll have one more question, and I think we'll start wrapping it up. One more question, and we'll start wrapping it up. One more question for Robert. Great, thank you, Robert. Well, let's hear a tap all around. I'm just really impressed with you all. This has been fun. It's this kind of discourse should be fun, I think, and I've enjoyed being here with you and feel like we've learned a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and gavel out now, and then I do want you to stick around just for a few minutes because I want to get your thoughts about the process and hear from you on how we can do this better. So I'm going to gavel out this debate. So the debate is now over, and so if you, again, thank you for sticking around a bit. Remember that we do have some, where's the clicker? Where'd it go? It's right here. I just want to put up in, so our future creative conversations, just want to get the dates in front of you. There we go. So if you'd mark those on your calendar, that'd be great. So we're now done. I'm Joel again. So good to see you. I've been gone for a while, so it's good to see you again. And I just want to hear from you, what did we learn today, and how can we improve what we're doing, this conversation? What did we learn? What are what did you learn today?
Patience.
Patience, that's great.
Yeah, that's hard for me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Patience. Sonia.
I just think there's different angles, and people see it in different ways, and I think it's a good... I just think there's different ways to think about it, and so it's nice to get a bunch of different people together to see how they view it, because everybody has a different worldview and different experiences, and so I think that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. That's great. That's great. Any other thoughts? What did you learn this evening? What are you going to walk away with that's a little bit that will make you a better person and a better voter? Yes, John?
Every question has 25 points.
So what do you mean by that? So 25 sub-points, or?
There's so much that, all of us would want to jump up and talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Great, and so what can we do better here? How can we improve what we're doing? Any thoughts on that score? So why don't we, can we have, Alethea, I'm sorry. There we go, thank you.
I think we could extend it a bit longer. I mean, if people want to, there's people that are shy here and stuff, but they might get more comfortable or let people talk more than once.
So we actually did, and this is my fault, as I already said, that Carter was over here faithfully keeping time, but I wasn't consulting with him. So we finally got to doing that a little better. So we were running over, and we didn't quite get as many speeches in as we could have. And so that's partly my fault. But you're saying you would like to go longer?
Oh, yeah.
We've been going an hour.
And I was wondering if we could do one on climate.
Climate, that would be great. That'd be great. We've got our 3 next picked out, but and I know Roger had mentioned ranked choice voting is a good topic that we could do in the future, maybe in the fall. So, yes, Robert.
Thank you. More of a comment. I think this is a great forum. I'm reminded of, from the great state of North Carolina, of a place called Bennett Place, a little farm outside of Durham, where General Grant met with the last surrendering Confederate forces following the surrender at Appomattox. And on that site, they erected a monument, those men who fought, those bloody years against one another, and on the top of that monument is one word that says unity. And I think, to quote David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, when we are all shouting and everything, nobody's listening. So this was a wonderful evening of civility and open, and to John's point, also to tag on to what John said, every question is valid. Every point is valid, and we can agree to disagree.
Thank you, and I'm glad you came because you really added a lot. So appreciate your being here and other questions, or how can we do this better?
Believe me, I think this was wonderful. You did a great job. Right now in Pierre, this pipeline issue, they're limiting debate. The major issue, they're limiting the amount of time these speakers and people go up to Pierre that want to testify. They're not allowing them to. Tonight you gave everybody a chance. The only thing, maybe go to 3 questions and make the moderator, the people that are presenters, actually answer the questions rather than dodge and weave. Because the dodge and weave, I mean, that's the old standard. Just ask a question to answer that other question. But I thought this was excellent. This is civil dialogue. This is South Dakota. This is America at its best. I agree with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Civil dialogue rules.
Yeah, wonderful. Any other comments on how we can improve? You can tell me this anytime, John.
I know, but I was just thinking about this as I was, how long did I go, Carter?
Oh, I don't want to say. About 6 minutes.
6 minutes. And I saw him go like this, and I thought, I'm just not going to look at him anymore. But so anyway, but I think what would help is like, I remember like the Oxford Union debates where they do like the gavel, maybe a tap tap when you got like a minute to go. I really thought I was going to aim for 4 and 4.5 minutes. So, but anyway.
We'll have to talk about this one. Yeah. Excuse me, Tarek.
Give him the gavel.
Yeah. That's what exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We will improve. This is going to be our point of improvement to do a better job with the timing. So, any other final thoughts? Yes, Roger.
One thing, maybe your main speakers, the most qualified people that come to speak, should have a chance to speak at the end, and kind of as a wrap-up type thing. What they thought about it.
With the lake debate, we ended up scheduling, and I just didn't think to do it this time, scheduling closing like a closer, and it had to be like 1 minute long. So.
I don't think it's too important for 1 or 2 minutes.
Right.
Plenty of time.
Yeah. So, good.
I was wondering if maybe at the very end, like debate square, whatever they call it, they have a raising of the hand to see who won.
You know, Brave Angels doesn't like that, the winner-loser thing. I know the Oxford-style debating, they do a straw poll at first, and then they do the debate, and then they have another poll at the end. And when I do debates in my class, I do it that way, actually. So, but this is not meant to be competitive debating. It's meant to be a courageous conversation. And by the way, Jeff came up with that term, courageous conversation. I thought that was good. So, well, we have a whole lot of cookies and coffee back here, and so please go and grab a few cookies on your way out the door. We are glad you're here, and please remember the dates coming up for our future courageous conversations. Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Janelle, you need a mic.
Okay. If anybody is so moved